apparently Lorcana was quite the stir at Gen Con. From what I saw, Mike showed me a picture of the line for Lorcana, and it was massive, to say the
Yeah.
least. It looked like the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. So, Mark, talk to us about
So
Lorcana.
I think everyone probably knows or has a friend in their life that they would describe as a Disney adult. You know who I'm talking about? That person.
Mm-hmm.
They were at Gen Con for sure.
Yeah.
And Lorcana, so for those not familiar, this is the new Disney card game. Think Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! Collectible card game with the Disney theme. Initial release at Gen Con for the first time ever, is the first time you could get cards, and the hype was extreme. People lining up the night before, spending the night on the floor of the convention center, waiting in line. Myself and Chris, one of our other writers, waited until the last day of the convention to hopefully the crowds would die down. We got in line at 6 a.m. and we were still the 100th and 101st person in line and waited 4.5 hours to be able to just buy Lorcana cards. So 4 days, full lines every single day. The hype was extreme, and the question is it worth it? Is the hype real? Is the game good? And for me, yes. I got to demo the game. I got to interview Ryan Miller, the one of the co-designers of the game, and I played the game. I played the game sitting in line with Chris with some of the cards I got earlier, and then I've since played it several times with my wife, who's not really a gamer but was intrigued by the Disney theme, and it's a really solid game.
Well, and not only that, but like it hit local game stores like a week or two ago, and it's been selling out like everywhere. And the demand has been so high that a lot of these local stores have started like raising the prices on them.
And I've got to say the gameplay itself is really fun. It's a really solid game. So if you're interested just mechanically in the game, definitely check it out. Give the game a try because it's a solid game. But what really elevates it is the artwork. So if you're a fan of Disney at all, you grew up with the movies, you know the iconic characters and the artwork, and the artists that they've hired to create all new original art for the game have done a fantastic job. And then you have obviously your regular cards, you've got your foiled cards, and then your special enchanted cards, which are completely unique artwork compared to the regular cards. So people trying to find their favorite characters in packs, or buying the starter decks, or really hunting those enchanted cards. Just from a collector's perspective, even besides the just solid gameplay, it's so fun just to look at the cards. Like opening the packs and seeing your favorite characters that you grew up with is a surreal experience. I would never expect to hold a card with Tigger on it that I'm gonna use in a game. Like it's just so fun, even just looking at the cards. One of the things I think is really interesting that I just read this the other day. So one of the co-designers, Ryan Miller, who we got to interview, really great guy to talk to. He's really passionate about the game. So he didn't just sell Ravensburger a game and then move on to the next project. Like he loves this game and he's really passionate about it. And he's also the brand manager for the game, which I think is really cool that they have the guy that made it is just so heavily invested in seeing it succeed. And not just, he's not just in it for the next project.
Right.
He cares about the game, which I think is going to really make it successful in the long run, that the people behind the game care about the game. This isn't just a cash cow for them. Like they care about making a good game and creating a community around the game.
All right. Well, you've told me that the game is good. Why is it good?
Yeah. So I guess very briefly, the purpose of Lorcana, or the goal behind it when you're playing the game, is to be the first to reach 20 lore. So you're playing characters to generate lore. That's the reason you're going to play characters. But they have 6 different colors. So if you think of Magic the Gathering has different colors, or other games use aspects or different different ways to kind of come across the same thing. Lorcana uses colors. You're going to build a deck with 2 colors, and the colors are all themed to do different things. So you have, like, for example, steel is very focused on defense and bodyguarding characters, whereas the red color, who's the name they use is escaping me, but the red color is very focused on like quick attacks. Purple is very focused on generating lots of uh, smaller characters and flooding the board. So you have kind of classic themes of card games, or whether you want to do a powerful characters or flood stronger characters. And then mechanically, what I think is really fun about the game is the decision space that the player has to make, whether they're going to play a card, and am I going to use this to take out my opponent's board, or is it going to be a lore generator for me? When do I tap my cards to generate lore, but then that makes them vulnerable to attack? Just the mechanical design is really, I think, thought out well. So it's not just playing with Disney cards. The game itself is a really smart and tight game. There's already people producing meta decks that, this deck can win in 5 turns, or this deck is going to ramp up and allow you to be really strong at the end. Like, people are putting thought into this game already, which is a really good sign for it. There's a whole community of people on YouTube and on X and Discord that are designing decks and talking about this game nonstop already before it's even hit mainstream stores.
Before we launched this episode, we were discussing beforehand. You said it's kind of samey as other card games, but not.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a clone of another game. Like, Lorcana is its own game, but the individual mechanics that are within it are, I think, things we've seen before in other games, whether it's Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon. There's nothing that's mechanically like brand new. We've never seen this before, but it takes pieces from different games and combines them in a way that you get a new game. And like I said, I think it does it very well. For me, the real test of is this game something that's going to stick around in my personal collection is, can I get my wife to play it, who's not a gamer? And she was immediately on board with trying out Lorcana because of the theme. And then mechanically, like most card games, it's not difficult to play. The emergent kind of strategy is on the cards. How am I going to use my deck? When should I tap? When should I attack? When should I quest for lore? All things that you can introduce over time to new players and makes this game very accessible, on top of being more willing to be exposed to these more difficult mechanics because of the theme. Like, I'll listen to you and learn about the strategy because I'm playing with Ariel and Flounder, and that makes sense to me because I can connect those themes in my head.
I come from Yu-Gi-Oh! That's kind of my big card game of choice, but I've also, messed around with Hearthstone. I've definitely gotten into Legends of Runeterra. Those are more digital, but the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards tend to have a whole lot of text and different abilities and, all kinds of stuff to let you know how it works. How simple or complicated is the, I guess, abilities of each card?
So right now, because we have Chapter 1, this is the launch of the game, I don't think there's anything in the game that's really complicated or difficult to understand. You're not going to see any cards that have a whole paragraph of text on them like you might see in a Magic card. But there's... I guess the complication is in the strategy. How should I best employ this card, even though its ability is not that difficult? So we'll see as they progress in chapters. Are we going to see more complex cards, more complex interactions? I think naturally that's going to happen because as you create more cards, it becomes more complicated with new cards interacting with cards from, say, the first set, Chapter 1. But right now, very easy to learn, very easy to sort of figure out how to play, but there's definitely a challenge and strategy and thought you have to put into not only building your deck in a way that synergizes, but now that I have this deck of cards, how do I best use it?
My first impression of playing Call of Duty, the board game, is that I was just as bad at it as I was the video game. It felt so much like the video game in that I would move and get shot and killed immediately, like over and over and over again. Now, I did get better over time, but it was the most resounding feeling that I got, like that first demo that Mark and I played, and he just dominated me. I think I finally managed to get like 1 or 2 kills in towards the end, but like that was just like, hee pew, all right, I'm dead. It was humiliating. It's a good thing I feel no shame. So,
But that's why it made it good or bad.
oh no, I really enjoyed it. Actually, by the second demo, when we introduced like a bunch of the other mechanics, because it was an advanced demo, I was starting to get the hang of it, and I was giving Mark a run for his money. Actually, I think I was. I mean, I wasn't I wouldn't say I was dominating, but I was in the lead for a good chunk of that. Did I win the second game?
I think you did by 1 point. Yeah, the first
Yeah,
game, I,
yeah,
I think I was up 8-0 on you, and then
yeah,
you had a couple towards the end, and then the second game we were neck and neck the whole
yeah.
time.
I still like the one question that I kept on asking the people in charge of the demo is like, all right, where's my bunny hop card? You know, like I need something here, guys. Come on. Also, a lot of people I heard a lot of people talking like it wasn't that great, and I think the problem is that the way they framed it, like that beginning demo game, didn't have enough
Hmm.
meat to it. Like it didn't have enough fun stuff to it. It was just it was one of those game demos that was set up to kind of teach you the basic mechanics of the game. And all of the fun stuff is not in the basic mechanics of the game. It's the stuff that overlays on top of the basic mechanics of the game. And so I think a lot of people just saw, the former and didn't get the latter. I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you think, Mark?
So I thought the game was incredible. So I'm a huge fan of two-player tactical games, and I think the Call of Duty board game shines as a two-player head-to-head game. Mechanically, if you think you're playing a game of Call of Duty, not Warzone, but regular deathmatch Call of
Your
Duty,
arena
Mm-hmm.
6v6, yeah.
and you're running around. Call of Duty is a fast game. The time to kill is very fast, and that split-second decision making that you're doing every time you see a person. Am I going to slide? Am I going to take cover? Am I going to shoot them at
Mm-hmm.
all? Am I going to crouch? Which weapon am I going to use? If you were to pause and then blow that decision out, that's what the board game does.
Yeah.
So you're both players are simultaneously planning out in secret, here's how I'm going to move on the map, here's when I'm going to aim down my sights, here's when I'm going to throw a grenade, here's when I'm going to sprint or slide, and then you reveal those orders that you planned, one at a time. And if
Mm-hmm.
anybody sees anybody else, you stop and you shoot at each other, and somebody is going to die no matter what. If there's a firefight, one of the two people is going to die.
Wait, so
Mm-hmm.
how does the shooting phase go? Like once you see each other?
So you have to choose a card, and the cards represent uh, those mechanics in Call of Duty. Whether you're going to aim down your sights, or whether you're going to take like a long shot, or you're going to
Or you're gonna
sprint.
strafe.
You're going to sprint and shoot or strafe, and those
Yeah.
determine kind of your range of damage that you can do. And then you choose from a pool of dice. You're going to make your own personal dice pool of 7 dice. And you can choose dice that are more defensive, you can choose dice that give you more accuracy, or you can choose dice that give you more damage. Both players are going to roll their dice, and you're going to compare, and whoever does more damage wins the combat, and the other player dies.
I
Which I think,
mean, not always dies, but most of the time dies.
yeah, which that's one of the things I think can feel off-putting to maybe people that don't play video games and just play board games. Like, what do you mean I'm just going to die? I could just die in one attack. And if you're used to board games, like that would almost never happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels very Call of Duty. That fast
It
time to
very.
kill, that tactical decision making, and you're not out of the game. The opponent just gets a point, and then you respawn and you keep doing it.
Hit X and
Yeah,
try it again.
and like
No, I was actually I was very very pleasantly surprised at how well it maintained that like tension of a Call of Duty match, right? Like because I mean, yeah, it's like it's the it every action is kind of expanded out into something that would be equivalent of slow motion in the video game, right? Um, but you're that tension is still there, like because your every movement you make, like you make up to four different movements per turn, up to four. It's four, right? Yeah, four.
4. Yeah,
Um, like, and you reveal like it's hidden movement on both sides, and you reveal, and so like step by step, you see where the other player went, and you're like, oh, you're either, oh, I went the totally wrong direction, and I'm not like we're going in opposite directions, and we're not going to see each other. But more often than not, it's like, oh crap, he went that way, and I thought he was going to go this way, and now he's shooting at me, and now I'm dead. So
yeah,
that's pretty much that was like the first 45 minutes of the first game we played for me.
and that tactical gameplay of trying to outthink your opponent is so fun. Like I
Yeah,
had a blast playing the game. I am a little worried because we only played 2-player, and
yeah.
so the core box from the Kickstarter is sold as a 4-player game, and you're
Well,
playing,
it's
you know,
two
two.
core boxes. You have two different core boxes, and I think they're 2v2, both 2v2, but you get both
2v2.
of them. You can play for
Yeah,
yeah. I'm sorry, 1v. There's two 1v1 boxes, and then you combine them for the
yeah.
2v2.
Because of the way
Is
the game
is it two v
works,
two or is it uh wow? What's it? Everybody
free
for
for all.
themselves.
So I
Yeah.
think you can do free for all, you can do teams, and I think they even advertise you could go all the way up to like 9 versus 9. Because of the way the game works, though, I think it was a fantastic game as a 1v1.
Yeah,
Even a 2v2, I think, might slow the game down enough that it loses the Call of Duty feel. Like 1v1
yeah,
still felt quick and snappy, and
yeah,
we paused to plan, and then we quickly went through our turns, and we had a firefight, and somebody died, and then we respawned. Versus a 2v2, or if you played bigger teams, you're going to get really bogged down in the maintenance of gameplay that I think
yeah.
it's going to lose what makes it feel like Call of Duty.
The maintenance meaning like everybody deciding what they want to do, and that portion kind of taking some time, and then like the
How
shooting
many
phase taking some
dice?
time.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
everybody
Okay.
has to choose which dice they're going to use, which card they're going to play, and then okay, Anthony and I are shooting at each other, but then Mike and Anthony are also shooting at each other, and Timmy and John are shooting at each other, and it's just you're going to get like
oh, and Timmy fell in the well again.
yeah. So I think personally, I would play it as a 1v1, but we didn't get to play a team game, so I could be
Yeah,
totally wrong, but I could see it slowing down and getting bogged down with more players. Yeah, and it's got kill streaks. It's got the different operators across the other Call of Duty franchises. You can choose
yep,
which gun you're going to bring into the game, which affects the range and how much damage it does at different ranges. You customize, you do some deck building that's going to decide which kind of actions you can do during the game, which are going to be your like sprints and your slides and your that kind of stuff.
and
You set
certain cards have like had like tactical. What were they
Mhm.
called?
I think they were just tactical abilities. So
Tactical abilities. Yeah. So like
That
you
was Call of
could,
Duty.
yeah, you could use a tactical ability if you like lined everything up the right way and did it, a certain way. But you don't know that you're going to be able to use that tactical ability until you reveal that turn with
mhm.
each other. I was pretty impressed with it. Just based on the amount of Call of Duty, the video game I played, it felt very Call of Duty.
Yeah, I think another thing I saw a lot online around the game is why is this a Kickstarter and not just why didn't they just make it and release it? Like Activision has $1 billion. Why are we kickstarting the board game?
So I will say this: during the Kickstarter, there wasn't a peep from Activision. about the game at all. I think Arcane Wonders was on their own with that, and I guess maybe they were just playing it safe, like, oh well, if it doesn't do good, then they can blame Arcane Wonders for it, right? And I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think we've seen that with other video game
Yeah.
to tabletop adaptations. Horizon Zero Dawn, didn't hear a peep about. I just saw it on Kickstarter.
There's a
Uh,
Horizon Zero Dawn board game.
Yeah, it's not
there's
that good.
there's a
Oh,
Bloodborne board
The
game.
miniatures are
There's a
amazing, though. The
there's a God
miniature.
of War board game.
Yeah.
All of these,
okay.
huge video games that they're don't do like
Publishers and developers don't be saying nothing.
any marketing for the tabletop game. But I think it's a missed opportunity for people that aren't tabletop gamers. I'm on Kickstarter every day because I'm obsessive and I like to see the games that are coming out. But somebody else that sees, they're a fan of Call of Duty and they, Facebook push them this ad for the Call of Duty board game, they're going to go, why would I back this on Kickstarter? And now I have to wait a year for this game to come out when like Call of Duty is a successful franchise. Like why are we kickstarting this versus tabletop gamers are used to Kickstarter as a not necessarily a model for funding
It's a marketing
developers.
tool.
It's a marketing tool.
Yeah.
That maybe that knowledge hasn't transitioned outside of the tabletop arena.
Well, the thing I don't understand is that, like, the people who play tabletop games and the people who play video games generally act the same way about their chosen hobby as each other. Like, there's a strong desire for the new hottest hot thing. The latest games pushing the envelope, the latest versions of iterations of a game. Like, it's virtually identical in both worlds, and like if someone like if a company makes a tabletop game based off of a video game, or even vice versa, if they just work together and like got everybody hyped about it, that would probably be pretty successful. I don't understand. I guess the siloing is just still too strong in like upper management in some of these companies. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
It's
definitely
confusing.
a surprise to me. I backed the Kickstarter. I played the game at Gen Con. I thought it was really fun. But like you mentioned, the Kickstarter wasn't as successful as you would expect for a Call of Duty game or some of the other tabletop Kickstarters we've seen. Whereas another company might be releasing the 10th version of the same game again, and the Kickstarter is massively successful, and then you have this massively successful video game franchise come to tabletop, and the Kickstarter doesn't do that well. So I don't know if people just couldn't tell what the game was about or what was going on, but I had a really good time playing it at Gen Con with Mike.
Well, I would have to say, as one who is pretty exclusively into video games, I don't think the tabletop community probably cares about Call of Duty, and the Call of Duty community doesn't care about Call of Duty, the board game. They like Call of Duty, the video game. So then you get bad press about the idea of a Kickstarter, and because that's all I saw was negative press about the idea of a Kickstarter. GameSpot, Polygon, everybody's like, why is there a Kickstarter for Call of Duty? So then that's just bad press. Yes, it gets Call of Duty, the board game, out there, but in this case, bad press was not good press, I would imagine. So it just looks sleazy and schemy, which Call of Duty has a reputation for. Activision has a reputation for. So it leans into that. And so it probably, for that and probably a number of different reasons, that's probably why it didn't do so well.
I think the other thing that it kind of has going against it for a mainstream title is people that aren't already tabletop gamers have no concept of what a board game costs. Like if you think of a board game and you're not a gamer, you're probably thinking Monopoly. You're going to go to Walmart and buy that for $20. And then you see this Kickstarter
I think it's
for
more
a board
expensive than that, to
game.
be fair to Monopoly.
Yeah, $40.
Yeah.
You have this Kickstarter for a board game, and they're like, hey, the base game is $60 plus shipping, but if you want all of the game, it's going to be $220. And people go, $220 for a board game?
Yeah, because they're thinking paper, figurines.
Yeah.
Pfft, really?
Yeah. For somebody that's used to Kickstarters and this is your main hobby, you might be, oh, that sounds not bad compared to some other stuff that I've seen. But
Yeah.
if you're not already in that world, you're like, wow, I would never pay that much money for a box of cardboard and paper. So
That makes sense.
I kind of get that perspective.
I would take a little bit of exception with the idea that video gamers might not be interested in board games. I think yes.
Call of Duty specifically.
I think
specific to Call of Duty.
I think Call of Duty is not a franchise that you'd see a lot of crossover. I do agree with that. But I do think there are a lot of different genres of video games that do cross over to tabletop and back and forth. This was probably the one thing I was the most excited to see at Gen Con. And it did not disappoint. It was a very early prototype. We've got a video up on the channel right now of the demo / overview that Paverson Games gave us at their booth. But Luthier is basically all right. So Paverson Games created this game called Distilled, which was known for having great mechanics that worked with a great theme. And Luthier is looking like it's shaping up to be that exact same approach. It takes place in a specific time period when Stradivarius and Mozart and a lot of the famous composers lived, Beethoven, and basically each player represents a family of instrument makers, and your family grows over time. But the idea is that you are making instruments for your patrons, who could be a conductor like Beethoven, or a person in the royalty in the royal court in Europe, that sort of thing. And then you're getting more and more clout and points and resources when those instruments are getting played, and yeah, it's basically a Euro style game. It's got some worker placement mechanics to it, and just like Distilled, it's got a luck mechanic in the terms of rolling the dice when you actually do a performance. It looks stunning. The art is starting to kind of peek through the design a little bit, as you can see in the video. Like the top board is very sparse and very basic, but the bottom player board there has a little bit more of design added to it. It's still in a very early state, but looks and sounds gorgeous, and cannot wait to play it. I could effuse at length for sure about it.
Fuse away a little bit longer. Go
yeah,
for it.
yeah. So yeah, basically, what you're doing is and I thought Luthier actually refers to primarily making string instruments, but they've kind of expanded it to include non-string instruments like brass instruments, like flugelhorns and trumpets and stuff like that. And
Flugelhorn was the first one that came to your mind. Interesting. Okay.
Well, it's because there's a flugelhorn in the video on the picture.
You're
Yeah.
making that word up. That's not a
No, it's a real world.
That's a real instrument.
Otherwise known as a French horn. Um, they're they're almost, yeah. Never mind. The high school band in me is bubbling
You
up
had
to the surface.
flugelhorns in your high school
Yeah,
band. Okay.
yeah, totally. Well, I mean, they were French horns. Flugelhorns are French horns.
Sure. Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
heard of French horns, haven't you?
I went to high school in LA. We did no, that was not the
Yeah.
thing that we
All
trumpet.
right.
You know.
Trumpet. Yeah. Okay. Um, but yeah, basically, you start off with these numbered discs, and you're sending the discs vary in value. The higher the number, the more ability, like the more precedence you take. Like so, like a 4 or a 5 would be the head of your family, and then like a 1 would be, oh, you're sending the kid out to go get supplies, right? And so you place your discs every turn on the different worker placement areas on the board. You gather resources to create um, your instruments, um, and the instrument cards. You basically have to buy the instrument cards. It's sort of like buying a recipe to build that instrument, and then you pay the resources that you've gathered according to what kind of instrument it is. Like if it's a brass instrument, then you're going to be using a lot of metal. If it's a like a violin, you're going to be using some wood, and you might have they have an animal resource because strings were made out of catgut, right? That sort of thing, or certain things that were derived from animal sources to help create some of these instruments. And so then that's on your workbench, which is on the left there, and then you refine their instrument and you take it over to the right, and like you basically string it up, and you find out how good the instrument is, and then you take that instrument and give it to your patron. And if that satisfies your patron, then they stick around a while longer. And if you satisfy them, and like if you really satisfy them, then they become like a permanent part of your tableau and give you special abilities and that sort of thing. And the whole board, like if you look over there on the well, underneath where Dave is showing that, it looks like kind of like a theater house with like some like a building there. That's going to be what the main board is actually going to look like eventually. That white, right now it's that white rectangle, um, and then you basically take that into the orchestra, and you add it to the orchestra. And there's certain, like if you're the first one to provide a violin to the orchestra, then your violin the violinist becomes first chair, right? So
Mm.
they take precedence, and you get more from that when a performance happens. And then the performance is you roll the dice, and that's the luck component to the game. And Dave said it was a totally optional aspect of the game. You could go through the whole game and not do a performance at all if you don't like luck-based mechanics in your game, and still you have a good chance to win. It's just you're rolling the dice. You know, if you're behind, it might be a way for you to help catch up a little bit, and get some resources or some clout and support from it.
That's a really interesting addition to a Euro game, which traditionally, doesn't. They try and take all the luck out of it.
Yeah,
Players want to, like, I don't want to rely on luck. I want to plan my strategy and win or lose off of my own merits. But a lot of times in Euro games, if you're behind, halfway through the game, like, I have no chance of winning this game. I'm just going to keep playing for another hour and a half. and hopefully the game is really fun and I'm having a good time. But I have
right.
no chance of winning. So really interesting that to add that luck aspect in to as a catch up mechanic. Hey, maybe I'll do this thing.
Well, and that's what I really, really liked about Distilled is the way Distilled incorporated luck. It was more of a mandatory mechanic than in what they're doing in Luthier. But the idea with Distilled is that you would gather your ingredients for the spirit that you were distilling, and then you would put them into like a deck and shuffle that deck, and then because when you distill something, you something is lost in the distillation process, you would remove the top card and the bottom card and put them back into your storeroom, and then whatever was left would be what you'd have to match up to your spirit recipe, your spirit recipes that you have available. So you could, if you didn't stack your deck with enough of a certain type of ingredient, you could accidentally distill that ingredient out and have to make vodka instead of like something much better, right? It was less of a catch-up mechanic, but it was more of like just a really kind of unique thing that added a little bit of like uncertainty
That sounds
to the game.
mechanically interesting. I don't know that it makes sense for the distilling process, but it sounds like a fun mechanic for the game.
It's a little fiddly in terms of the theme. Like they definitely, like I definitely don't think that you're going to match up a recipe after you distill. Like you're really going for it. But I guess if you screw up a distillation process, then you're still left with something, and you can still make vodka or
Yeah.
moonshine, which are the two base drinks.
Get ready to be stepped on by a giant baby, eaten by a dog, or smashed by a beach ball in castles by the sea.
It was good.
Yeah. So
that was a good one. Yeah, I like that. Okay, what is Castles by the Sea?
this was a game that none of us had heard anything about going into
Not a
Gen
thing.
Con.
Not a thing.
And I was walking the floor on my way to another appointment, and we would walk past the Brotherwise booth, and I saw this game. I told other Mike, my cameraman, hold on a second, I gotta look at this game, and I bought it on the spot just based on just the visuals. Took it back to the Airbnb, opened it up, played it, and it's really fun for a game that was just out of nowhere. So it's a really light game. So you're building sandcastles, but thematically you're playing as these little like elves or little elven creatures that are probably like, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches tall. In the real world, the sandcastles are their home. So you're trying to uh, build certain patterns so that you can place your little elves out onto the board to score points. So the more of your pieces that you get onto the board every round, the more points you score. But at the end of every turn, you have to flip hazard cards, and this is where the game really throws in some extra fun, mechanically, but also just the theme is hilarious. The hazards, you're going to choose 3 for each game, but they could be a dragon, which is actually just a kite, a dog that comes and jumps on the sandcastle, a beach ball that rolls across the sand and wipes out a whole row of buildings. It could be a sandstorm. It could be a crab that comes over and starts eating your pieces. And my favorite, it could be a baby, like a fat baby that just waddles over and stomp, just steps on your pieces. So you're building up these sandcastles, trying to get your little elves out, building their kingdom out on the board, and then these hazards are rotating around constantly, destroying your buildings, eating your little elves, and sending them back home. Really light. It's a really simple game, really easy to teach. You get to play with these nice chunky wooden blocks. If you get the Kickstarter version, the meeples are all screen printed. The production is beautiful, and it's just really fun. And even when your pieces are getting destroyed, it's just fun. The baby ate my princess, or the dragon blew over all my buildings. Totally out of nowhere, saw this game, and one of my favorites that we saw at Gen Con.
This was a late night meeting. Wasn't expecting this to be. I didn't know what to expect of this.
Were you in an alley and they were like, "Hey, Mike, I gotta-"
Picture this: it's 10 p.m.
they're like, "Hey, Mike."
We go into a hotel room.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much
I have
it.
something.
And
for
there
you.
are 300 other people actively playing games at 10 p.m. in the
Think you
Yeah,
might
the
enjoy
hotel
this,
room was
Michael.
actually a ballroom, right?
Yeah.
So it was, yeah.
We can do some things in this ballroom. I got something for you. It is quite
You want to
out
go
of
to
this
space?
world. I can send you there.
Do you need some meeples? I got meeples.
Yeah. All right. So Galactic Cruise.
Yeah. So yeah, this was a very pleasant surprise. It's a Euro style game. It was an early prototype. The theme of it is that each player runs a company, a galactic cruise company. So instead of like cruise ships that go on in the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean, they go to other planets. Obviously, they're spaceships, but not. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So like you're basically um, building your ships. You're gathering resources to promote your cruises. You're trying to attract different types of um, uh, like customers, cruise people who want to go on your cruise. And I think the thing that really, really stood out to me about this game, other than the gorgeous Ian O'Toole artwork on the cover, which Ian O'Toole is one of the most well-known tabletop game artists in the business right now. Not only is his work just visually stunning, but the interaction design, the way it's organized, he organizes the boards and everything is really maximizes the player's ability to understand what's going on the board. But the thing that really stood out was that there's a lot of Euro style games where you're doing some worker placement and it's very tight. Like if you don't get that one spot and someone else gets it, then your whole plan may fall apart and you're not able to like keep up and it's hard to kind of like vie for dominance and keep going, keep up the point making that you're going to be making. This one rewards you at every turn. Like not only are you always going to kind of get something satisfying from placing a worker somewhere on the board, but um, if another player has a worker on a place that you want to go, you can still go there. The price of that is that you knock their worker back to the player, and then that player gets to replace that worker during that same round. So it's in effect you're trading getting what you want for potentially giving another player an extra placement on the board that turn, because it's not like you've got it locked in. It's you just basically get your worker back, and the next time it comes around, you can place that worker again. And
Yeah.
usually once you place a worker, you can't take it off, right? And I think that's what really stood out to me about this game. I don't know. What did you think, Mark?
Yeah, there comes that time in a typical worker placement game that either the end of the rounds where everybody takes their workers back and it's just kind of filler time, or games where at some point you have to spend your whole turn taking your workers back where other people might still be going. And that's just not fun. That's always like a turn that you're wasting. Whereas this game is, like you said, constantly rewarding. And this is not an easy game. So it's just because you're getting constantly rewarded doesn't mean this is a simple game. I would put this on par with, a Vital Lacerda game that, tabletoppers might be familiar with. A very complex, efficiency focused, tons of interactions on the board. But the difference,
like a Brass Birmingham kind of thing.
Yeah,
too.
And what I think elevates this game is it has that efficiency puzzle. It has that tightness of resources, but it somehow still allows you to feel good every turn. You're getting benefits every turn, like you mentioned, versus having bad turns where, oh, somebody took my spot and my plan is ruined. Or this turn I'm just resetting. You don't have that in this game. It manages to reward you at every turn while still having that efficiency puzzle because of how interconnected every system is on the game. Attracting customers or building your rocket or doing R&D to advance your technology, building connections between the different places that you can place your workers so that you can put a worker down and activate the actions at a connected place that you've established before. Everything is so interconnected in this game that it's going to give you a ton to think about. But even those turns where you're doing a small turn is still going to reward you in a way that your typical worker placement game doesn't. What I got from the quick demo that we did was every turn is going to feel good. You're going to have fun the entire game, and then at the end you're going to see who won. But you had fun doing stuff the entire game. You never felt like I can't do anything because I'm blocked or I don't have the resources or whatever it may be.
Another thing that that really stood out to me, mechanics wise, on the game was you're building your ships that are carrying passengers to other planets. You're building them step by step. You're adding tile on tile on tile, and like you could have a ship that is like 6 tiles high, or you could have a ship that is 2 tiles high, and each one of those pieces is going to determine how many passengers you can put on the rocket. And then once you're ready to launch that rocket, you cap it off with basically a route to the planet or star or whatever, wherever it's going, the destination. And then over the next however many turns that are on that route, you're moving like a tracker that is kind of acting out the ship's time to get to the planet. And I think there's even like some things that can happen along the way that that alter things just a little bit. But it's just like this really nice kind of like, all right, I built my ship, I've sent it off, and then in like 4 turns, I'm going to get the payoff for it, because that's how long it takes for it to get to its destination. And you can have multiple rockets going at the same time. So it's I like games like that introduce mechanics like that, because it kind of it's fun kind of setting something into motion and then like cashing out like a few turns later. Like you really kind of worked really hard to like make this rocket just the best it could be, and then it really pays off in about 4 turns. But you got to last 4 turns, and you got to like make sure you build other rockets and do other things to make sure that you're not falling behind in the meantime.
Yeah, there's a real sense of the competing companies thematically where Mike, your company might be building this big rocket that's going to take 6 customers to Mars, And I might say, I'm going to build a smaller rocket and just take one person to Mars, and I'm going to be the first one to do it to establish myself on this, the interval scoring board to get more
Mhm.
points. Whereas you might get a bigger payoff later. I'm going to get some rewards earlier that might set me up to do something different. So there's different strategies you can pursue in that sense as well.
This is actually produced by Darrington Press, which is the company that Critical Role formed for all of their TTRPG and Critical Role themed stuff. And now this is their first real stab at a proper tabletop game. It's a deck building game. Um,
And
and
if you're not in the tabletop gaming world, Critical Role is the live play Dungeons and Dragons group that's the by far the most popular uh, anywhere of anybody that does live plays
yeah,
online of Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah. I mean, Critical Role has become its own kind of commercial juggernaut in its own right at this point. Um, and at the beginning of the year, they announced they did already like made a source book for the adventure that they were doing on the live play, and they've come out with a couple of other little things, and they announced a couple of new TTRPGs that they're working on. But this one really stood out to me because it is totally unlike any of that. It is a deck builder that is really interesting in that it's not just a two-player deck builder, because a lot of deck builders are just 1v1. You can play up to 6 players. Um, and then it also has this amazing table presence with this clock that sits in the middle of the table, that not only acts as the round marker on the clock face, but it also features a dice tower, and then your market for all of the advanced cards for the deck building aspect are also on that tower. And the whole tower is a lazy Susan. It can reorient players can reorient it to themselves. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's one of the finest cardboard constructions I've seen in years. Um, but it's basically, the premise is this: the queen of the land just passed away, and on her deathbed, she decreed. I believe she passed away. On her deathbed, she decreed that her successor would have to be crowned by midnight, and that the 6 princesses of the land would have to basically fight it out to see who became queen by midnight. And each princess has asymmetrical powers in their decks. Some of them um, have certain abilities that require dice to be rolled. Like, you can roll on a table based off of what's on the card. Others, it's there's just so many different varying ways of play that and I think they are focused on like 3. I think there's 6 different spheres, and then like each one of them has like 2 of the 6 that kind of comprise their deck, right? Like, I think they go by different colors, and each color represents a different kind of power set. And then each queen, each princess, their deck is comprised of cards that fit within 2 of those power sets, 2 of those colors. Um, so it's it's just, I mean, it looks beautiful, but just based on what we saw of the gameplay, and we're actually going to we actually got a review copy that we're working on right now, and I'm going to be playing this tomorrow for the first time unsupervised by someone who made the game. But it kind of ramps up incrementally over time. So there, depending on how many players, I think up to 6 players, you actually have a full 12 rounds. At lower player counts, you start like further along on the clock because those clock hands move on the tower. Um, and then the first market is mostly about like gathering resources. And then when the clock strikes 6, the evening market um, comes into play, and it's a whole different group of cards, and these are a little more powerful. And then by 9 o'clock, the night market comes out, and those are super powerful cards where you're like chaining abilities and doing some really crazy stuff to each other. And there's even each player also has like a certain amount of like up higher level cards that become available as time goes on that you can also fold into your deck, that are keyed specifically to that character. So there's a lot of variability in how you can build your decks out, and there's a lot of asymmetry in terms of how each of the princesses like their play styles that you would have on it. Super cool looking game, just gorgeous production value. Has some of the best table presence I saw all con, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know much about this game, but one of the things I read that I thought was really cool, and maybe I saw this in your video, Mike. So, but that
it's possible.
It's a battle royale, so you're fighting each
Yeah.
other, but there's also a separate point mechanic. I don't remember what it was called, prestige or honor or some way you're acquiring points, and you could win that way instead of being the last one standing. And there's you can form alliances. So the different ways to play, different ways to win is something that's always cool to see in a game versus everyone pursuing the same.
Yeah,
we could be playing the game totally differently.
If I recall, there's a mechanic in there where as you get later into the game and maybe your player has been eliminated, then you might end up becoming an advisor to another player, and that's another way that you're getting points. You're kind of helping them win, but you might end up winning because of some secret machinations that you're doing, on the side. It's got some really amazing ideas, and I can't wait to see like how it really executes.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Along with I like deck builders that use that mechanic of the market changes as the game progresses versus the same market, and maybe turn 1, the most powerful card in the game is in the market, and then nobody can buy it.
Right.
It kind of progresses, which is something that was in one of my favorite games from 2 years ago, Wonderland's War. Which is an Alice in Wonderland theme game, uses that same thing where the market evolves as the game goes on. So really cool to see that again in this game.
All right.
Yeah, so we'll have a review of that up soon, actually.
Very good. Queen by Midnight.
Yep.
I wish I was a part of this picture, but I'm going to bring it up, and I just want your first quick thought on it. This is super cool to me.
Yes. So yeah, we were invited to go to the Lorcana launch party at Gen Con, and one of the cool things is they set it up to where you could take a picture and get a custom Lorcana card made, and so that's me and John Farrell and of course Mark. And I was like, well, I'm gonna get the 3 of us that are here, and we're gonna do this like iconic pose.
Apparently, Mark went rogue and just got his own.
So we got to do it. This is one of my prized possessions from Gen Con.
Yeah.
Custom
Hold
Lorcana
up.
card.
Hold up. Let me put you.
Oh,
Let me.
Some bad
Right.
lighting in here.
Yeah.
This is me.
Let me just solo you. There we go.
Completely amazed that I am getting to participate in this awesome just Gen Con and the party for Lorcana. And then thematically, I am transported as an Illumineer into the game, and just can't believe that I'm here. So, really, really cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well, it's best of Gen Con according to Game Trend. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Some interesting games.
And so, I mean, now, mind you, that isn't all we consider to be the best of Gen Con. And we're actually going to be, by the time you're watching this, God willing, our best of Gen Con article, our best of Gen Con roll up of everybody that we awarded a best of Gen Con award to will be up on the site. So be sure to check that out. It's a great way to check out a bunch of the coverage that we posted from our time at Gen Con this year.
Very nice. All right. That'll do it for us. Tabletop Takeover. Appreciate it. It was fun, as usual.
Did it? Yes.
Yeah. Congrats to you guys. I know it was a lot of work. But you're done. Well, at least with that stuff. Still more
I'm always
to come. Yeah. All right. Talk to you next week. Back to our normal video game talk, because it's going to be a big one. So, talk to you later.
Going to be about Baldur's Gate 3, maybe?
we talked about that one last week. It's going to be just as big, at least in scope of interest.
Starfield. I'm sorry.
Yes, there you go.
Silly me.
Baldur's Gate 3 board game comes out.
Right now.